Welcome to CBTV. Surviving the storm. It is possible to use your breathing to embrace our strong emotion and experience relief. We are so vast, and our emotions are just one part of them. We are much more than our emotions. A strong emotion is like a storm that comes, stays a while, and passes. Every must learn to survive a storm. The practice of belly breathing is essential. Every time a strong emotions like anger, fear, sadness, or despair comes up, we should go back to our breathing right away so we can take care of the storm raging within us. We are like a tree in a storm. The top branches of a tree may be blowing wildly in the wind, but the trunk and root are stable and firm. With belly breathing, we bring our mind down to our trunk, our abdomen, where it is calm and stable. We should not stay high up in the branches where we are blown about. Whether sitting, standing, or lying down, bring our attention to our abdomen and focus 100% on your in and out breath and the rising and falling of the abdomen. Stop thinking about whatever triggers storm and just follow your breathing. Focus on the belly. After 5, 10, or 15 minutes, the storm of emotion will pass. Our mind will have re-established its clarity and calm. Belly breathing is something you can do anytime and anywhere. Whenever you have to sit and wait for a few minutes instead of reaching for your phone, why not challenge yourself to follow your breathing 100%? It is a way of training your spiritual practice body, and soon bringing your mind to a breathing will become a habitual response that can save you in difficult moments. You can also train to come back to your belly breathing when you encounter smaller difficulties and challenges that arise every day. Then when a tidal wave of emotion comes, your practice body will be there for you when you need it the most. Recognizing and embracing suffering. You should not be afraid of suffering. You should be afraid of only one thing, and that is not knowing how to deal with our suffering. Handling our suffering is an art. If we know how to suffer, we suffer much less, and then we are no longer afraid of being overwhelmed by the suffering inside. The energy of mindfulness helps us recognize, acknowledge, and embrace the presence of the suffering, which can already bring some calm and relief. When a painful feeling comes up, we often try to suppress it. We don't feel comfortable when our suffering surfaces and we want to push it back down or cover up. But as a mindfulness practitioner, we allow the suffering to surface so we can clearly identify it and embrace it. This will bring transformation and relief. The first thing we have to do is to accept the mud in ourselves. When we recognize and accept our difficulty, feelings, and emotion, we begin to feel more at peace. When we see that mud is something that helps us grow, we become less afraid of it. When we are suffering, we invite other energy from the depth of our consciousness to come up, the energy of mindfulness. Mindfulness has a capacity to embrace our suffering. It says, "Hello, my dear pen. This is the practice of recognizing suffering. Hello, my pen. I know you are there, and I will take care of you. You don't need to be afraid." Now, in our mind consciousness, there are two energies, the energies of mindfulness and the energy of suffering. The work of mindfulness is first to recognize and then to embrace the suffering with gentleness and compassion. You make use of your mindful breathing to do this. As we breathe in, you say silently, "Hello, my pen," and as you breathe out, you say, "I'm here for you." Our breathing contains within it the energy of our pen, so as we breathe with gentleness and compassion, we're also embracing our pen with gentleness and compassion. When suffering comes up, we have to be present for it. We shouldn't run away from it or cover it up with consumption, distraction, or diversion. We should simply recognize it and embrace it like a mother lovingly embracing a crying baby in her arms. The mother is mindfulness and the crying baby is the suffering. The mother has the energy of gentleness and love. When the baby is embraced by the mother, it feels comforted and immediately suffer less. Even though the mother does not yet know exactly what the problem is, just the fact that the mother is embracing the baby is enough to help the baby suffer less. We don't need to know where the suffering is coming from. We just need to embrace it, and that's already brings some relief. As our suffering begins to calm down, we know we get through it. When we go home to ourselves with the energy of mindfulness, we are no longer afraid of being overwhelmed by the energy of suffering. Mindfulness gives us the strength to look deeply and give rise to understanding and compassion. Embracing our pain and suffering is an art. It may take some training to learn how to do it. As a meditator, you are an artist, and the art of embracing your suffering is particular to you. You can be creative in how you handle a painful feeling. You may want to draw a pen, listen to inspiring music, or write a poem. Some of my poems that have the most beautiful images were written during the time when I was encountering my greatest suffering. Writing these poems were a way to nourish and comfort myself so I wouldn't lose my balance, so I would have the strength to continue my work. When I'm experiencing a difficult feeling, I often choose to bring a beautiful, positive memory to comfort me and water the seed of hope in my consciousness. It may be the memory of my favorite cedar tree in Plum Village or the image of the young child laughing and playing with delight. This is a way to garden the mind. The positive energy of the good seeds gladdens the mind and embrace and penetrates the painful feeling. What would be the positive memories or experience you could call upon to have embraced and balanced the energy of sorrow and or despair you when it comes up? It is also possible to take your suffering for a walk to allow it to be embraced by the earth, the blue sky, the sunshine, and little miracles of light that are all around you at the very moment. To suffer is not enough. You also need to remember that the wonders of life are there. When you stay present in your body, present with your breathing, and present with your suffering, you allow Mother Earth and your cosmic body to embrace your pain. You allow the waters of life to comfort and refresh you and bring you some relief. A healing presence. When you know how to handle and embrace your own suffering with compassion, you will also know how to help someone else who is experiencing pain, either physically or emotionally. If you have the energy of calm and compassion yourself, then you be a source of those energy for someone else. When you sit next to them, they can feel the energy of your presence. They can feel your compassion and care. You don't need to do or say anything. The quality of our presence already changes the situation. You are just like a tree. You may think that a tree is not doing anything at all, but when you touch a tree or sit at the foot of a tree, you can feel the energy of the tree pervading you. The tree has an energy. It simply stands there as being a cell, and that is so refreshing, nurturing, and healing. Sometimes someone else's suffering can make you feel powerless. It may be like there's nothing you can do to help them, but in fact, you can generate and sustain an energy of calm and embrace your own feeling of powerlessness. By following your breathing and relaxing your body, you are taking care of the environment of the energy of your tree. Offering a high quality of presence for someone who is suffering can already be very supporting and healing for the other person. Many of us want to do something to have the world suffer less. We see so much violence, poverty, and environmental destruction all around us. But if we are not peaceful, if we don't have enough compassion, then we can't do much to help. We ourselves are the center. We have to make peace and reduce the suffering in ourselves because we represent the world. This compassion and well-being begin with ourselves. When we can reconcile with ourselves and embrace and transform our suffering, we are also taking care of the world. Don't think that you and the world are two separate things. Anything you do for yourself, you are also doing for the world. Practice the art of suffering. If you want to understand your suffering, you first need to calm yourself down. You need to embrace your suffering with compassion. Then you have a chance to look deeply into it in order to understand its roots and transforms it. Transform it. Don't run away. We know there's suffering within us, but we don't want to go home and listen to it. We're afraid we'll be overwhelmed by the pain, the sorrow, the despair inside, so we try to run away from ourselves and suppress it. But as long as we run away, We'll never have a chance to heal and transform. So the first step in the art of suffering is to use the energy of mindfulness to be present for our suffering. Your spiritual practice body, your mindful breathing, and the energy of mindfulness, concentration, and insight give you the courage and stability to recognize, handle, and embrace what's coming up. Avoid the second arrow. Someone who is hit by an arrow is a great deal of pain, but if a second arrow comes along and hits the person in the same place, the pain will be 10 times worse. You're suffering in the first arrow, and the second arrow is your irritation, anger, resistance, and reaction to whatever is coming up. The second arrow could be your fear, which imagines the situation to be much worse than it is. It could be your inability to accept what you are suffering, or it could be your frustration or regret. You have to be calm and recognize your suffering clearly just as it is, without exaggerating or amplifying it with other worries. Identify the roots. When you embrace your suffering with mindfulness, you discover that your suffering carries within it the sufferings of your father, your mother, your ancestor, as well as the suffering of your people, your nation, the world. And many of us may have experienced moments of acute sadness, fear, and despair that we don't understand. We don't know where the feelings come from. When we look deeply enough, we are able to see the deep root that can be the ancestral suffering passed down to you. This helps you transform the suffering and reducing the pain and despair you feel. Nothing can survive without food. This is just as true for suffering as it is for love. If your suffering, sorrow, and depression has been going on for some time, there must be something that is feeding it. Every day we are consuming our thoughts. We are consuming TV, movies, music, conversation, and even the collective consciousness and environment around us, which might be toxic. So be attentive and reflect deeply to see whether these elements are feeding your suffering at the roots. As we start to change our habit of thinking, speaking, behaving, and consuming, we cut off and uproot the sources of food, and our suffering will steadily begin to die. As it dies, it becomes composed, nourishing new flowers of understanding and compassion in the garden of our heart. The goodness of suffering. It's very tempting to want to stay strong and healthy and never suffer any pain and illness. Many of us hope that we will never have to encounter serious difficulties or challenges in our lives. But my own experience is that had I not encountered great difficulties and suffering, I would never have had a chance to grow on my spiritual path. I would never have had the chance to heal, transform, and touch such profound peace, joy, and freedom. If we don't experience suffering, how can we ever generate understanding and compassion? Compassion is born from understanding suffering, and without understanding and compassion, we cannot be a happy person. I care very deeply for my children, but I would never want to send them to a heaven or any place there where there is no suffering. We cannot create happiness in a place where there is no suffering, just as we cannot grow lotuses without mud. Happiness and peace are born from transforming suffering in pain, and if there was no mud, how could a lotus grow? Lotuses cannot grow on marble.